App Store or on the web, and then you measure, right? You see how well do people like your product? How well are you solving that problem? Now, chances are you're not going to solve it great the first time, right? So you're going to take that feedback, take what you see, and apply it again, and go through this loop again. Make sure I got the problem right, tweak my solution, tweak my UI, engineers do it again and again and again, right? And at each step, you're also seeking feedback. So for the engineers that are kind of there on step 4 and maybe 5, things are always changing, right? Every day, the product team comes and says, we need to change this. It now needs to work with this. It now needs to do that. And that can be frustrating for an engineering team, but you need to do this today to stay competitive. So really the goal is, with this product process, is to go through it quickly, so you learn quickly, but also sustainably, right? You need to survive over the long run. You can't burn yourself out quickly iterating and putting yourself in a position where you can no longer work with the code. So being an engineer, I'm going to talk about that step 4 there. So if only there was a set of practices or guidelines that would allow an engineering team to thrive in face of all this change. Well, let's talk about extreme programming. Here's a definition from the extreme programming book called Extreme Programming Explained, and it's, you can read it, but it talks about a methodology for developing software in the face of rapidly changing requirements effectively, right? Sounds just like what we need, right? This was written in 1999, almost 20 years ago. Extreme programming's changed a lot since then, and the definition is also, but this part about responding to change is still there at its core. You might also look at Wikipedia to see what it says about extreme programming, and you'll see this list of practices. And who here does some of these in their office today, on their team? Okay, most of you. And this is great, right? Since the late 90s, most companies, most teams do some form of this stuff. That's great, that's awesome. Altogether, this helps you stay competitive, but you really need to be able to know how it's useful and why, so you can tweak it and tailor it for your specific situation. If you look at these, and one of the stories that I've heard Kent Beck tell about how he came up with extreme programming, the practices in extreme programming, is taking all the good things that were working for them and maximizing them. So for example, they had this realization, hey, automated tests are good, right? We should do more of that. How do we do more of that? When should we write them? Well, what if we write them before we write the code? Yeah, that sounds like an interesting idea. So they tried it and it worked. Code reviews. Code reviews are great. We get all this feedback about the code. We find bugs. But how frequently should we do code reviews? Well, what if we did them all the time, right? That's where pair programming came from. So basically, they took all these excellent things that worked and turned them up to 11, right? And that's where extreme programming came from. So let's talk about pair programming. Now you might ask, but isn't that essentially, 2 people doing the work of a single person, right? That sounds like a bad business strategy. And you may be right, but before we talk about why it makes sense, let's talk about what pair programming actually is. So at its simplest, it's 2 people, as you can see in the picture, sitting at one computer. They have 2 screens, but it's one machine. Working with 2 keyboards and 2 mice on the same task, right? That's what pair programming is. This is not pair programming, right? This is a movie, right? This is pair programming. I like this picture because they're not actually working. They're not typing anything, right? They're talking, they're discussing. And a good pair actually spends a lot of time discussing. It's all about finding the right way to move forward, the right design, thinking about edge cases and dependencies. But in the end, you end up with better quality code. So let's think about how that affects your speed and sustainability, right? What we talked about in the product cycle. So if you have two people focused on a single task, they're catching each other's mistakes, right? And bugs are shallow, right? Yeah, they'll fix each other's bugs quicker. You'll have fewer bugs that make it out to production that you need to fix later. So in the end, you have a higher quality product sooner, right? You're delivering value faster. And it's sustainable because you're keeping each other honest about sticking true to the design philosophies you have on the team and the code architecture. So you're not being lazy, you're not introducing difficult code that's going to be a challenge later on down the road. It's a great way to ramp up on an existing code base, right? Coming into a team and learning an app, a code base, that's a lot of work. It's complex, right? But if you have a guide there that's walking you through everything, explaining the history, your ability to contribute to the project and deliver value to the team comes much quicker. And in the same way, as long as you're rotating pairs, so you're not stuck pairing with a single person all the time, the good habits among the team will start spreading, right? That means everybody's on the same page with the good practices, with how things should be organized in your code base. And people's bad habits tend to go away as they unlearn them. This, again, with the team rotating around and pairing with one another, that spreads knowledge about the entire system with everybody. So that increases your ability to deliver value faster because anybody on the team can build whatever is the most important thing to do right now, right? If my database expert or the guy who wrote a lot of the database code is on vacation, right? I can still have someone else do most of the work to deliver a new feature. I don't have to wait for that database guy to come back before I can ship. And it helps with sustainability, with everybody being pretty familiar with the whole app, throughout the app. When they get a page at night because something's wrong, they can fix it, right? They don't need to wake up everybody else just to figure out what the problem might be. And that's good for your team. Your team will like not getting woken up in the middle of the night. I like this slide that talks about distraction, right? So pair programming is resistant to personal distraction. If you're alone, chances are you might start reading some blog post, or I'll just check this email real quick or whatever, and then 2 hours have elapsed, and you're like, I still haven't started work. But with a pair, they're going to keep you honest. You're not going to look at your Facebook with someone else staring at the screen, right? This is a slide from Onsifa Kuri's presentation a couple of years ago. It's an excellent slide, so I just took it. You should watch the talk too, it's good. Pair programming is also resistant against normal, regular, run-of-the-mill office interruptions, right? The programmers here may have seen this comic on the left where, the programmer is trying to understand some code and is building up this complex model in their head, and manager walks up and says, hey, I sent you an email, and then poof, everything goes away and they have to start over. Whereas when you're pairing, and this has happened to me, right? When you're pairing, you're talking about something complex, you're deep in the weeds, someone comes and interrupts you. In this comic, they ignore the manager and he just walks away. But in practice, you can actually, one of you can handle that interruption, can go answer the question, whatever, come back and jump right back in without losing the context. It's happened to me. So, all of this means you stay focused, you stay on task, you keep delivering, you don't get interrupted. And I guess finally, it's a really rewarding way to work. Being able to interact with someone throughout the day helps you develop non-technical skills like communication or patience. Patience is a good one. Not everyone's a good pair, right? But you get to learn. Humility, because you're going to learn from everybody you pair with, whether that person is your junior or your senior. And it makes for a fun place to work. And I guess most of all, it does mean your company can deliver its value faster and sustainably. Yeah, I love talking about this stuff, so feel free to come up to me afterwards and ask more questions. There's more to XP than just pair programming. I don't have enough time to talk about it, but I'll talk to you about it afterwards. BBM is hiring. Come look at us there and reach out to me. Thanks for your time. You have a question? Yeah.
How do you select the pair? Right? Who should select the pair? Developers should select the pair, or managers should assign the pair?
Developers should select the pair. So ideally, in the morning when your team meets up for their stand-up to kick off the day, they choose. And you know, how do you choose? So usually you'll have some list of tasks that people are working on or that need to get done. So the team can self-organize. I'm going to work on this because I have experience here. Who wants to pair with me, right? I'd like to learn this particular area of the code base. Can I pair with you on that? Oftentimes people have a hard time doing something new in the morning because they're in the middle of something from the day before, right? It's helpful if you can teach yourself not to care about that, and in the morning be like, okay, my pair, you finish that with someone else, that's okay. I'll work on something different. I'll join someone else in the middle of their thing. Because you're pairing and you have this shared knowledge of the code base, to get ramped up on what they're doing takes a couple minutes, and then you're off and being productive. Yes?
Why XP and not something else? And does it matter at all as long as you're agile?
Well, XP is really just like this umbrella term for a bunch of practices, right, that you should apply to whatever makes sense for your context, right? So I think the way I think of agile, it's kind of like that too, right? When I talk, I might use them interchangeably, right?
So do you enforce the rules or you enforce the spirit of being agile?
The spirit, yeah. Because, so one thing that I kind of didn't really get into too much is that it's really important to understand why these practices exist, what problem they're trying to solve, so that you can know whether the practice at your company is actually achieving that goal, right? Solving that problem. And if it isn't, how do you change it to solve that problem, right? Yes?
So you at BBM, can you tell us how often do you actually use pair programming? Like every single user story, somebody pairs up with somebody else, or when it's a very complex matter, or?
Yeah, so the mantra or the approach that I have, that I kind of repeat to people is, we pair on all production code. So anything that is going to go out to users, to production, should be paired on, whether it's complex or simple.
Is there code that doesn't go to production?
Yeah, sometimes. For example, when you're spiking out a new solution, or maybe that's it. Yeah, or when you're experimenting. But in practice, it kind of varies, right? I don't force it on the teams. The teams sometimes split up to, handle things however they feel is best. So, yeah.
How much do you
estimate the effort? How much difference do you estimate for the pair programming and the single programming?
In terms of estimating the effort?
Yeah, the effort. Because, let's say if you want to estimate the effort on this task, how much different you spend on pair programming and single programming?
Okay, so when we estimate the effort for a piece of work, we estimate as a team. And I guess the assumption is that a pair will do this task, right? Any pair. With estimation, the points really don't matter, right? It's kind of a funny game this way. The value of estimating something as a team is to discuss it to the point that everybody's clear on what needs to get done, right? So if someone understands that there's some hidden complexity that other people don't, that's important to communicate, right? If someone knows that there's a shortcut that can be taken to achieve this, this task, that's the important thing that we need to get out. Does that answer your question?
No, actually, at the end of the day, the business they need to concern about if they do it this way, how much they can save, how much cost they can save.
How much cost they can save?
Is it possible?
Wrong question.
You know, I think if it would be possible, there would probably be some papers out there about it or some reports that definitively say pair programming is better or not. I think maybe if I spend some time doing research about pair programming, I might come to some conclusion like that. But no, yeah, uncertain. I don't know. Yes.
In today's environment, which is rather uncertain, how much of the time does your team spend on experiments, spike solutions? Proportion.
Proportional.
20%, 30%, 50%?
It depends on the state of the project or the thing that we're building, right? So, for example, when we're kicking off an integration with a new partner, that proof of concept phase dominates, right? It's a bunch of stuff that we're not testing, right? It's just really about
figuring out.
Right. If I press this button, will the user around the world see something, right? Can I even make that happen, right? And then as we go, you know, as that becomes more defined and understood, you know, then that experimental time tapers off as we ramp up on writing production code.
So what's the communication like to the bosses upstairs? That we're all goofing off trying to figure out solutions?
Fortunately, my bosses asked me to work this way. So, yeah. No, that's true. It's, I've been fortunate enough to, so at BBM, we've been working this way from the beginning. So basically we told the bosses, this is how we work, and you don't get to tweak that, right? This is our domain. You just tell us the business needs you need us to solve, and we'll go from there. So we're lucky, yes.
How to convince your manager that the team needs pair programming?
That the team needs, yeah. So we just tell them this is how we do it, and you don't get to. Okay. So if you were to talk to your manager, right? That's the question. Okay. Well, you could show him my slides, but. Okay, so really, maybe this is probably to your.
I think you already answered the question. Continuous code review.
Right. Okay. So there's a number of angles you could take, and maybe the best answer kind of depends on your organization and team makeup, right? So if you're struggling to keep all the junior developers on your team up to speed and in control, maybe pairing is a good solution for that, right? If you have a lot of bugs that you're shipping and only finding in production 2 weeks after, maybe pair programming is a good solution for that, right? And you know, you can actually explain that somehow to your manager and say, look, I spent 18 hours over the last 2 days fixing these 2 bugs, right? That's 18 hours that I wasn't writing your new feature that you wanted shipped yesterday, right? So how much money did you lose, right? With me fixing this bug, and that might answer your question a little bit about, you know, the monetary benefits of pair programming. Yes.
So you use extreme programming in the projects where the client is always available and the requirements are rapidly changing. But for the other scenario where the clients are only available at certain times, they're not always available, and our delivery is actually a long-term delivery where maybe I'm getting to a revolution or I'm doing something because some rules are changing in some country and I know the date on which it will change. In that scenario, does extreme programming make sense? Or
yeah. So the thing is, you need to work with your client to get them to work with you closer on how you want to work, or you should be working, right? So, you know, tell your client, I need your time every week, you know, to look at the stuff I've done and to give me feedback, for example. And I didn't quite understand your question about the regulations in the other country, but does that help?
Because my requirements I know are going to be delivered only after 1 year, actually.
Okay.
In between, I have just developing and showing what we have done. So in those cases, I really don't have a scenario where I will have big changes.
Oh, okay, okay. Right, I see.
Does it make sense to do extreme programming in that case?
I still think you should strive for it. So when you have this large set of requirements, you're saying 1 year out, so that's a lot of time, development time, right? So 1 year of requirements, that's a lot of requirements to be building kind of and delivering all in one heap. So you should strive to take that whole thing and slice it into the smallest pieces you possibly can, end to end, and deliver that, from idea to delivery and measurement of how successful it is as quickly as possible, right? So instead of saying, okay, we need to do A, B, C, D, E, right? Let's build the visual layer and the database layer and the routing layer, right? And then here you go. Pick A. Okay, let's, whatever A is, build all the little pieces, do all the infrastructure, get in the habit of deploying that, seeing it through to production, and then repeat with B, and repeat with C, and so on. So XP will help you there. And you're going to learn so much just from going through that cycle. Yes?
So after the player has completed the work or the code that they've done, should there be third person reviewing the code also, or should it be assumed that because two people have already done it, they must have seen the code and it's good to go in production?
Right. That depends on your team. I think that's for your team to decide how they feel about that. Most of the teams I'm on, we don't do another code review. Like, we consider code that's been paired on reviewed. Other times, we still do like a pull request and just merge it. At least that's an opportunity for other people to take a look, see what's happening, maybe provide some advice, or just learn what kind of changes are going in for a feature. It's also helpful for me. That's how I kind of keep up to speed. I see like units of work delivered, a pull request at a time instead of reading through individual commits, right?
So your team does pull requests and doesn't commit directly to the master?
I ask them to, yes, correct. They do a pull request and then they merge it right away. Those pull requests should be like a day's worth of work, not like 3-week-long feature branch or anything like that. Yeah. But you should talk about it with your team. And if there's code quality problems, maybe the answer is more eyes on the code before it goes in, right? If your reviews looks good to me, then maybe you don't need them anymore. Yeah. Hey, thanks for all the questions. That was fun. All right.